In my career, over my long career, I've led or even performed myself a number of investigations. One of the most difficult in many ways was when I was the head of internal audit at a company called Business Objects. Now, Business Objects was a relatively large, just under $2 billion in revenue software company. And it developed analytics mostly for business people, but also software that you can actually buy in the retail outlets as individuals. Well, most of it was for business. And we would sell our products directly to customers large and small, but also through channels where we would have a partner that would buy some quantity and then they would sell it on through their outlets. Now, there are a number of revenue-related frauds that can be perpetrated, usually by people on the sales cycle, in management, or in the field. And they're somewhat peculiar to this kind of business. One of those is what's called a side letter. Now, this is where the salespeople are working with a customer who is interested in purchasing some volume of our products. And that volume is perhaps not sufficient for that salesperson or the head of the sales function to get their bonus for the quarter. So what they want to do is they want to incent the customer to buy a larger volume. Now, you can do that legitimately by offering them a special deal with approvals from appropriate levels of more senior management. You'd offer them a discount. But one of the other things which has been done in the past and is somewhat prevalent in the software industry, if you're not careful, is where the salespeople will say, well, I know you want to buy 100 units. Buy 120. I'll give you a better price. I know you only need 100, so I will commit to you that you could return that 20 for credit in the next quarter. And I'll even put that in writing to you. So then the customer will issue a request, a purchase order for the 120, would pay for the 120, perhaps, but perhaps only pay for the 100 in the next quarter and ask for a credit memo to reduce the amount that they owe. So we would look for these because this is not good for the company and it's fraud. It's basically enriching the salesperson at the expense of the company because the company is actually getting a lower level of revenue than it could and should. So what we would do is monitor the volume of credit memos, credit notes, in the first weeks and month of each quarter. And lo and behold, we found this one. And I looked into it and investigated it myself. I had a very small department. I was the only individual that was trained to perform investigations. So I looked into it and I found that yes, there was a side letter that the company, as represented by the salesperson, had said that if you buy this extra volume of product, you can return it or get credit in the next quarter. And we will give you also a discount. So I found this, and the side letter was written by a very junior member of the sales staff. He'd been an accountant at some low level, moved into sales, and was really just learning the business. This didn't seem that to me that he was the actual person that was negotiating this deal with the customer. And so as I looked into it, I found that there was in fact somebody else far more senior to him that was responsible for engaging and writing a contract and selling to this particular customer. And that was a vice president, a regional vice president for the western part of the United States, a very senior person. I talked to the salesperson. He admitted, yes, this is what happened. But I was instructed to do this. I can't, he said he couldn't show me any written instructions to do this. He was told to do this. Maybe not in so many words as to write a side letter, but to put in writing the commitment that the company had that the individual, if they didn't need the product, they could return it for credit, full credit. I talked to the vice president. Vice president said, "Oh no, we don't do that kind of thing. If he did it, he should be disciplined. I didn't approve of it. I didn't even know about it." Well, I didn't believe her. I really didn't believe her. She was a very aggressive, assertive individual and was clearly the only person that was really engaging with this rather significant customer, long-time customer. So it was clear that the junior salesperson had engaged in the fraud. It was my belief, but I couldn't prove, that he had done this at the direction of his boss, who was far more senior to him, and in fact was a rather intimidating individual. So I reported the facts as I had them to senior management. It was not my job to determine, first of all, was there fraud? That's a legal issue. So the lawyers decided whether that was a breach of the company policy and what it amounted to, but it was clearly fraud. And I also didn't determine what discipline should be exercised against which individuals. But I provided my input. And my input was that the vice president should have known about it, probably did, and probably directed it, but I couldn't prove it. So I was unable to prove or even persuade management that some kind of discipline of any substance should be exercised against the vice president. But I did stand up for the junior salesperson. I said, this person needs to be protected from extreme retaliation by the vice president or termination by the company, because I don't think this individual deserves termination. That's my personal opinion. I thought this person was victimized, basically. And so management agreed to do that, to just warn the individual, and I let them decide what to do. They said they would have a discussion with the vice president, which I was not party to. But I did decide that I wanted to talk to the salesperson myself. So I called him into my office and I laid out the facts that what he had done was not only a violation of company policy, but it was fraud. And he laid himself open to being terminated, but the company had decided not to do so because although he had signed the code of ethics, the code of ethics didn't specify this particular activity. And he should have been able to rely upon his boss to know. But he needed to know what was and was not okay going forward. So this was difficult. I think that the vice president should have been fired. I think the salesperson should have been warned. But sometimes as an investigator, as an internal auditor who's doing investigations, you can't necessarily get, quote, justice as you see it. Things don't necessarily turn out the way in which you hope. But our job is simply to identify and report the facts of the case. Yes, we can have an opinion. Yes, we can express and share that opinion with top management. But at the end of the day, it's not our decision what management does about it. And in this case, at least I feel good about the fact that the junior person didn't take the entire fall and didn't get terminated. In fact, continued to work with the company successfully for a different vice president. I hope you liked this story. There are others in the channel. Please subscribe.